I built an $8 million company to take care of my family, only to hear my parents say, "We're giving your shares to your sister. She needs them more." My dad smiled and said, "You'll always be able to make money, she won't." I looked at him and said, "Is that right?" That same night, I pulled every investment I had. And that was only the start. They never saw what was coming. Imagine pouring every ounce of your soul into building something from scratch, clawing your way to success, only to have your own father look you in the eye and say, "We've given your shares to your sister. She needs them more than you do." My jaw probably hit the floor that night. But that was just the beginning of a betrayal that would unravel my entire family and force me to reclaim my life. Honestly, when I think back, my childhood in Millfield, Ohio, felt like a constant uphill battle. My parents, Richard and Margaret Wilson, lived paycheck to paycheck. Dad worked at the factory, Mom took odd jobs. Our two-bedroom house was always falling apart, and my sister Charlotte, 3 years younger, was the fragile one. She had asthma, and while it wasn't life-threatening, it became the foundation of our family dynamic. Charlotte's needs always came first. Always. By age 10, I'd already understood my role. I was the responsible one, the self-sufficient kid who shouldn't cause trouble. I never complained when my parents missed my school plays because Charlotte had an appointment, or when I got hand-me-downs while she got new clothes for her allergies. It felt like an unspoken rule. She was the one who needed saving, and I was the one who would do the saving. But even then, I had this drive, this spark for business. At 11, I ran the most profitable lemonade stand in the neighborhood. Seriously, I tracked everything in a notebook. By 14, I was fixing computers for neighbors, charging $15 when the local shop charged 60. Mr. Peterson, down the street, taught me the ropes, becoming the closest thing to a mentor I had. "Jenny," he'd say, "you have a mind for business. Don't let anyone tell you different." His words meant the world to me. Throughout high school, I juggled multiple jobs: library, grocery store, tutoring. Most of my earnings went straight into the household fund. When Charlotte needed a new winter coat or Dad's truck needed repairs, I just handed over my savings. No one ever explicitly demanded it, but the expectation hung in the air, thick and heavy, like the dust in our attic. When college letters came, I chose State University over a partial scholarship to Cornell. It was closer, more affordable, and it meant I could keep working, keep supporting my family. I majored in business administration, totally captivated by entrepreneurship. That's where I met Ryan Davis in an intro class. He was a coding genius, but admitted he had zero business sense. We clicked instantly. Our semester project, a digital marketing platform, blew everyone away. "We could actually build this, you know?" Ryan said over coffee, his eyes gleaming. "The market needs this." My parents? They were less enthusiastic. "A good stable job with benefits is what you need," Dad would always say. Mom would add, "Not everyone can be a big success story, honey. Sometimes it's better to be practical." Meanwhile, Charlotte dropped out of community college after one semester. Not her thing. She bounced from retail job to retail job, never holding one for long. Each time, my parents would explain, "She just hasn't found her passion yet," or "That manager had it out for her." After graduation, I got a great job offer from a marketing firm in Chicago. Good salary, enough to keep helping my family and start my own life. But Ryan's entrepreneurial fire had completely consumed me. Our conversations had moved beyond theoretical. He'd already started coding in his spare time. The night before I was supposed to accept the corporate job, he called. "I just quit my job," he announced. "I'm going all in. Are you with me or not?" It was the hardest decision of my life. Safety versus risk. Predictability versus potential. Accepting my designated family role versus carving my own path. I told him I needed to think, but my mind was already racing. I barely slept. By morning, I had my answer. I called the marketing firm, declined the offer, and then called Ryan. "Let's do this." The early days? Brutal doesn't even cover it. Ryan and I lived on ramen and coffee, working out of my tiny apartment. We built our platform with 18-hour days, constantly refining our pitch. Our first bank loan application was rejected. The loan officer barely looked at our plan. "No collateral, no experience," he droned. "Come back in 2 years." Walking home that day, I broke down. Not just because of the rejection, but because a text from my mother popped up, asking for $300 for Charlotte's car insurance. It felt like the universe was determined to remind me of my role, the provider, the safety net, with no one to catch me. Ryan found me on a park bench. He didn't offer empty platitudes, just sat in silence. "We don't need them," he finally said. "We'll find another way." And somehow, despite everything, I believed him. We launched WebSphere Solutions from my apartment. Our office was a wooden desk I'd found on the curb, 2 folding chairs, and a whiteboard we'd mounted without landlord permission. The first 3 months were a barrage of rejection. Hundreds of cold calls, refining our pitch with every no. Ryan tirelessly improved the platform. We lived on cheap coffee and discount groceries, stretching every dollar until it screamed. The breakthrough came out of nowhere. Timothy Westfield, marketing director at Regional Healthcare Network, finally agreed to meet after my 7th follow-up call. "Your persistence impressed me," he admitted, sitting across from us in a downtown coffee shop, the only meeting space we could afford. We showed him our prototype, explaining how it would streamline their digital marketing. Timothy asked tough questions, but I saw the interest in his eyes. "You're rough around the edges," he said finally, "but you've got something here. Let's start with a 3-month trial." That night, Ryan and I celebrated with actual delivery pizza. It felt monumental, like the first crack in a dam. With Timothy's contract as proof, I made the agonizing decision to ask my parents for an investment. They had about $25,000 in retirement savings. Not much, but enough to rent a small office and buy essential equipment. I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe in this. I told them at their kitchen table, showing them our business plan. Once we're profitable, you'll get your investment back with interest, and I'll be able to help the family even more. My father ran his hand through his thinning hair. What happens if this fails, Jennifer? This is all we have. It won't fail, I said, with a conviction I wasn't sure I felt. I won't let it. After a week of hesitation, they agreed. I had my lawyer draw up proper documentation, making them minority shareholders with a 15% combined stake. I was just grateful for their trust, never imagining how that decision would come back to haunt me. The next 18 months were a blur of 80-hour weeks. I developed severe insomnia, often going days on just brief naps. My social life? Non-existent. On my 30th birthday, Ryan had to remind me it was a special occasion I'd completely forgotten. When we finally moved into our first small office, a modest space above a deli, I felt this new sense of legitimacy. A real business address, not my apartment. Hiring our first employee, Amanda, felt huge. Someone else's livelihood now depended on our success. The regional healthcare contract led to referrals, and we landed 3 more major accounts. Each new client brought revenue, but also new challenges. We were growing fast. During this time, Charlotte married Peter Sullivan, an aspiring musician who hadn't held a steady job in years. And guess who was expected to pay for a significant portion of the wedding? Me. Your sister only gets married once, Mom insisted when I suggested a more modest celebration. And it's not like you don't have the money now. I wrote a check for $15,000, money that should have gone toward hiring another developer. When Ryan questioned it, I made excuses about family obligations. I just couldn't say no. When we hit $500,000 in annual revenue, I took my parents out to celebrate. Their investment had been crucial. We always believed in you, Dad said that night, despite years of evidence to the contrary. Mom added, we're so proud of how you're taking care of the family. That's what matters most. Their words should have warmed my heart, but they left me cold. Was that truly all they saw in my accomplishment? Just my ability to take care of them? A few months later, their car broke down. I didn't hesitate. I bought them a new, reliable one. It felt like a tangible way to ease their stress. The business kept growing, but not without setbacks. A server crash nearly cost us the university account. The stress gave me severe migraines. I ended up in the emergency room after collapsing during a client presentation. You can't keep going like this, Ryan told me in my hospital room. The company needs you healthy. What he didn't say, but I read in his eyes, was his concern about my family. He'd seen the constant calls, the emergency money requests, the way I dropped everything for them. Then, Thomas Reed from Venture Capital Partners noticed us. He saw our presentation at a conference. His offer for first-round funding came with tough terms, but it was the capital we desperately needed. Your valuation is approaching $2 million, he told us during negotiations. That's impressive. $2 million. The number seemed surreal. We'd built something valuable from nothing. Part of me wanted to celebrate, but another part recognized what that increased value meant, increased expectations from my family. As our team grew to 10 employees, my role shifted from doing everything to managing people. The learning curve was steep, but I found I had a talent for leadership. Our office expanded to take over the entire second floor above the deli. We invested in proper furnishings, new tech. With success came more family expectations. Charlotte's husband, Peter, decided to start a recording studio and expected me to provide the startup capital. My parents started talking about retirement, hinting they'd need additional support beyond Social Security. And through it all, I kept saying yes. I just couldn't break the pattern established in my childhood. WebSphere Solutions continued to thrive. We moved into a proper office building downtown, 3 times larger, with glass-walled conference rooms and a real reception area. Walking through it the first time, I felt equal parts pride and imposter syndrome. Was this really the company Ryan and I started at my kitchen table? Our team grew to 25 employees. Each desk represented a person with rent to pay, maybe a family to support. That responsibility kept me awake many nights, but it also pushed me to work harder. When the business valuation approached $5 million, I decided it was time to get my parents out of their deteriorating neighborhood. I found a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a safe area. Not because Charlotte still lived at home, I'm mentally justified, but because she and Peter frequently dropped off their kids with my parents when they needed creative time or had gigs. This is too much, Jennifer, my mother said when I showed them the house, her eyes betraying her words. She wanted it, but felt obligated to show token resistance. You deserve it, I replied. And I can afford it now. My father walked through the room silently, inspecting everything. Finally, he turned to me. Your sister could use a new place, too, you know? The comment stung, but I'd grown accustomed to such moments, the instant pivot from my achievements to Charlotte's needs. One thing at a time, Dad, was all I could manage. Charlotte became pregnant with her second child and promptly quit her minimum wage job. The chemicals might harm the baby, she explained. Besides, Peter is this close to getting a record deal. We just need to focus on his career. My parents nodded like it made perfect sense, while I calculated how much more financial support the family would expect from me. I was already covering Charlotte's health insurance through WebSphere, listing her as a dependent, a questionable practice my accountant had warned me against. The dynamic grew increasingly uncomfortable. Charlotte started calling me directly for doctor's appointments or baby supplies, bypassing our parents entirely. You're my successful big sister, she'd coo with practiced admiration. I'm so lucky to have you looking out for me. At home, my parents boasted about our Jennifer to neighbors, but in private, they focused exclusively on what more I could do for the family, particularly for Charlotte. I once overheard my mother telling her sister, Jennifer could certainly help Charlotte with a down payment for a house if she wanted to. It's not like she doesn't have the money. The resentment I felt conflicted with the responsibility I'd internalized. Wasn't this why I'd worked so hard? To take care of my family? But the one-sided nature of our relationship had become impossible to ignore. My achievements were valued primarily for their utility to others, not as accomplishments in their own right. It was at a client event that I met Michael Anderson, an architect whose firm had just signed with WebSphere. He was intelligent, funny, and refreshingly direct. When he asked me to dinner, I surprised myself by accepting. Between building the business and managing family, dating had been non-existent. Tell me about yourself, Michael said on our first date. And I don't mean WebSphere. I want to know about Jennifer. The question caught me off guard. Who was I, apart from my company and my role as provider? I struggled to answer, realizing how much of my identity had been consumed by responsibilities to others. As we continued dating, Michael noticed the constant interruptions, calls during dinner, weekend plans canceled because Charlotte needed something, the way my expression changed when my parents' number flashed on my phone. They rely on you a lot, he observed carefully after I cut our weekend getaway short because my parents' AC broke. They need me, I replied automatically. Michael chose his next words carefully. There's a difference between supporting family and being taken advantage of, Jennifer. No one had ever suggested my family dynamic might be unhealthy. His comment opened a door I hadn't allowed myself to look through, but I quickly closed it again. You don't understand. They sacrificed a lot for me growing up. But Michael's observation lingered, making me more aware of patterns I'd previously accepted without question. With WebSphere's continued success, I decided to formalize the company's share structure. My parents already had their 15% stake, which had grown significantly in value. I even consulted our attorney about possibly extending some shares to Charlotte, thinking it might provide her with passive income and reduce the direct financial requests. Meanwhile, Charlotte's demands grew more specific and more expensive. Her children needed private school because the public options weren't good enough. Their house needed renovations because it was affecting the children's health. Peter's studio needed upgraded equipment because the industry standard had changed. Each request came with emotional leverage, subtle reminders of childhood sacrifices, implications that refusing meant I didn't really love my family, suggestions that my success obligated me to others. The breaking point came when I overheard my mother on the phone while visiting their house, the house I had purchased for them. Jennifer just doesn't understand how hard things are for Charlotte, she said. She's always been selfish with her money. You'd think with all her success she would do more. I stood frozen in the hallway, a gift basket of expensive groceries in my arms, groceries I'd brought because my mother had mentioned they were too expensive on your father's pension. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The narrative I'd accepted my entire life, that I was responsible for everyone else's welfare, that my value was measured by what I gave, suddenly felt like a chain around my neck. When Peter's recording studio failed after less than a year, everyone expected me to cover the losses. $60,000 of debt magically became my responsibility because family helps family. I wrote the check, but felt nothing but cold resentment. WebSphere reached an $8 million valuation on our 5th anniversary. Ryan organized a small celebration, champagne, a cake shaped like our logo. We did it, he said, raising his glass. From your kitchen table to this. I'm proud of us. That same week, I received a regional business award recognizing female entrepreneurs. The ceremony was on a Thursday evening, and I invited my entire family. None of them showed up. Charlotte had a migraine, Peter had a gig, and my parents needed to watch the grandkids. I sat alone at the table reserved for my family, accepting congratulations from strangers, while those empty chairs mocked me. Michael attended in their place, arriving late after an emergency at work, but making it in time to see me receive the award. You deserve to be celebrated, he whispered, trophy in hand. The favoritism towards Charlotte had become so obvious that even employees noticed it. When my parents visited the office, they spent most of the time talking about Charlotte's children and making excuses for her failures, barely acknowledging the business I'd built. You need to set some boundaries, Michael suggested after witnessing a particularly uncomfortable family dinner where my parents praised Charlotte's new hobby of painting, which I had paid for, while barely asking about the company. The idea of boundaries felt foreign and frightening. What would happen if I stopped being the provider? Would there be anything left of our relationship? After much consideration, I decided to organize a special family dinner to discuss the future direction of WebSphere. Our attorney had suggested setting up trust funds or more sophisticated shareholding arrangements. I thought this might be an opportunity to formalize expectations and establish healthier patterns. I consulted our lawyer beforehand, wanting everything to be above board. As the dinner approached, I felt increasing anxiety. My parents' recent behavior suggested an entitlement that went beyond normal. Charlotte had made several comments about her share of the business, despite contributing nothing. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what actually happened. I hosted the dinner at my parents' house, the house I had purchased for them, thinking the familiar environment would make the conversation easier. I even brought an expensive bottle of champagne to celebrate WebSphere's success and the family's part in it. The evening started pleasantly enough. Charlotte and Peter arrived late, as usual, with their kids. Mom had prepared my favorite childhood meal, roast chicken, mashed potatoes. It touched me, despite the underlying tension. During the main course, I shared our latest company milestones, a major new client, plans to expand to the West Coast, a potential partnership. Ryan and I had been working on these for months, and I was genuinely excited. That all sounds wonderful, honey, my mother said, but her eyes kept darting toward my father. Unspoken communication passed between them. After dessert, A store-bought cheesecake, despite Mom knowing I would have brought one from the artisanal bakery near my office. My father cleared his throat. He always did that before an announcement. Jennifer, he began, his tone oddly formal, your mother, and I have been talking about the shares in your company. I nodded, thinking this was leading into the very conversation I had planned. Yes, I wanted to discuss that tonight, actually. I've been speaking with our attorney about. We've made a decision, he interrupted, something he rarely did. We've given your shares to your sister. She needs them more than you do. The words, they didn't make sense at first. They hung in the air like an abstract concept I couldn't quite grasp. What do you mean you've given my shares? The 15% you own. My mother reached over to pat my hand. It's for the best, dear. Charlotte has the children to think about, and you know how Peter's career is still developing. But those shares are yours, I said, still trying to understand. Part of your retirement plan. My father's expression hardened. And we can do what we want with them. We're giving them to Charlotte. Charlotte sat straighter, a smug smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Not a hint of gratitude or humility, just entitlement, fulfilled. You can't just transfer shares without proper documentation, I explained, my business mind kicking in while my emotional self remained in shock. There are legal processes, tax implications. Your lawyer already handled it, my father interrupted again. We called him last week. The betrayal sliced deeper. My own company attorney? Had he facilitated this without telling me? It seemed impossible. Unless they hadn't actually spoken to him at all. They were bluffing or worse, had fallen for some kind of scam. Which lawyer exactly? I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. The company one? My father said vaguely. Thompson or Thomas or whatever his name is. Thomas Reed was our venture capitalist. Thompson was nobody. They were lying. But the intent behind the lie was just as painful as if they'd actually managed to transfer the shares. I see, I said quietly. My father must have misinterpreted my calm for acceptance because he added with a dismissive wave, you can always make more money, Jennifer. That's what you're good at. Charlotte can't. She needs security for her future. The implication was clear. My worth was in my ability to generate income for others. Nothing more. Not my hard work, not my sacrifices, not the years of supporting them all. Just a resource to be tapped. An ATM with legs. Charlotte finally spoke, her voice syrupy sweet. We're so grateful, Jenny. This will make such a difference for the kids' college funds. College funds? The children were 3 and 5. If Charlotte had actually received shares worth over $1 million, there would be no need to think about college funds. The money would have far exceeded any educational expenses. Her statement confirmed what I already suspected. None of them truly understood the value or function of business shares. In that moment, I saw my family clearly, for perhaps the first time. The realization was both liberating and excruciating. Years of being used, of conditional love based on what I could provide, of being valued only for my utility. It all crystallized in a single, painful moment of clarity. Is that so? I replied, my voice eerily calm. Something in my tone must have alerted my father, because his expression shifted slightly. Now don't take this the wrong way. We're still a family. We're just evening things out between you girls. Evening things out? As if my years of financial support, the house they sat in, the car in their garage, the vacations I'd paid for, the medical bills I'd covered, as if all of that counted for nothing in their calculation of fairness. I understand completely, I said, standing up. If you'll excuse me, I need to get going. Early meeting tomorrow. But you haven't had coffee yet, my mother protested weakly. And I thought we could look at those photos from Charlotte's painting class. Another time, I said, gathering my purse and the untouched champagne bottle. Thank you for dinner. The drive home passed in a blur. I made it to my driveway before the first tear fell. And then, it was as if a dam broke. I sobbed in my car like I hadn't since childhood, great heaving cries that left me gasping for breath. Years of repressed hurt poured out at once, not just from tonight's betrayal, but from a lifetime of being valued only for what I could give. Around midnight, I called Michael. Can you talk? I asked when he answered, my voice still rough from crying. What happened? He asked immediately, concern evident even through the phone. I told him everything. The dinner, the shares, my father's words. He listened without interrupting, only offering support when I finished. Jennifer, I'm so sorry, he said finally. But I'm not surprised. This has been their pattern for as long as I've known them. I know, I admit it. I just couldn't see it clearly until now. What do you want to do? He asked. A simple question, offering what my family never had, agency, choice, respect for my decisions. I don't want to just be hurt, I said, a new resolve forming. I want to take action. After we hung up, I spent hours analyzing every financial connection between myself and my family. The mortgage on their house was in my name. The car was registered to me. Their health insurance, their children's private school tuition, it all came directly from my accounts. I wouldn't do anything vindictive, that wasn't who I wanted to be. But I needed to disentangle myself from the parasitic relationship that had formed. First, I accessed the company account where I kept my personal investments, separate from operational funds. I withdrew every penny I had contributed beyond the essential working capital funds I had planned to use for our West Coast expansion. The business could survive without immediate expansion, but I needed these resources now to protect myself. Next, I emailed Ryan. Despite the late hour, he responded within minutes. After explaining the situation, I outlined my proposed next steps. His response was immediate and supportive. Whatever you need. We'll figure this out together. They can't actually touch your shares without documentation you would have had to sign. He was right. Of course, my parents' 15% was legally theirs to transfer if they somehow figured out the proper process. But they couldn't touch my majority stake. Still, their intent was clear, and I needed to protect the company as well as myself. As dawn broke, I felt oddly calm. The pain remained, but alongside it grew a clarity I had never experienced before. For the first time, I saw my relationship with my family for what it truly was. Not the mutual support system I had pretended it to be, but a one-way flow of resources and emotional labor. The question now was what to do with this clarity. My father called at 7:30 the next morning, his voice tense. "Jennifer, something's wrong with the house account. The mortgage payment was due yesterday, but the automatic payment didn't go through." Of course, he would notice the financial consequences first. Not my abrupt departure from dinner, not my obvious distress, but the interruption of funds. "I've made some changes to my financial arrangements," I explained calmly. "The mortgage is still covered for this month, but going forward, you'll need to handle the payments." "What are you talking about?" His voice rose. "We can't afford the mortgage on this place. You know that. That's why you bought it for us." "I didn't buy it for you, Dad. The house is in my name. I've been making the payments." "There's a difference." The silence on his end suggested this distinction had never occurred to him. "What's gotten into you? Is this because of last night? We thought you'd be happy we were looking out for Charlotte's future." The disconnect was so profound, it almost made me laugh. "I need to go, Dad. I have a meeting now." I hung up, something I had never done before. My phone immediately rang again, this time showing my mother's number. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was tearful and accusatory. "Jennifer, how could you do this to us after everything we've done for you? Your father is beside himself. Call us immediately." Everything they'd done for me. The irony was painful. I texted a brief response. "I'm taking some time to reconsider our financial arrangements. I'll be in touch once I've had time to think." Within an hour, I received multiple texts from Charlotte, each more frantic than the last. "Mom says you're cutting us off. What about the kids' tuition? Are you seriously doing this because Mom and Dad want to help me too? I thought you were different. I thought you cared about family. Then, Peter, you're being manipulative and controlling with your money." I silenced my phone and focused on preparing for the day ahead. This included an emergency meeting with our actual company attorney, Sarah Peterson, who was appropriately shocked when I explained what had transpired. "They can't transfer shares they don't have proper documentation for," she confirmed. "But the fact that they attempted this is concerning. We should review all company ownership documents immediately and secure everything." Before I could respond, my office phone rang. The receptionist sounded uncomfortable. "Your parents and sister are here. They're quite insistent about seeing you right away." Taking a deep breath, I told her to send them to the conference room. "Sarah, would you mind sitting in on this meeting?" I asked my attorney. "That's what I'm here for," she replied, gathering her notepad. The scene in the conference room was tense. My father's face was flushed with anger. My mother's eyes were red from crying. Charlotte looked like she might explode. "What is the meaning of this?" my father demanded as soon as I entered. "Cutting off the mortgage. Charlotte says her tuition payment for the kids was declined this morning, too." "I think we need to clarify some boundaries," I said, taking a seat across from them. "Sarah is our company attorney. She's here to address any questions about WebSphere specifically." "We don't need a lawyer," my mother interjected. "This is family business." "That's exactly the problem," I replied evenly. "There's been a harmful blur between family and business that needs to be resolved." Charlotte slammed her hand on the table. "Just say it directly. You're punishing us because Mom and Dad want to help me too." "No one is punishing anyone," I said, maintaining my composure. "I'm simply separating my business assets from personal giving. You can't demand shares of a company you've contributed nothing to." My father's expression darkened. "We invested in you from the beginning. That 15% is ours to do with as we please." "Yes, your 15% is legally yours," I acknowledged. "And if you want to transfer it to Charlotte, that's your choice. Though there are proper legal channels for doing so. But that's very different from what you implied last night." "What are you talking about?" my mother asked, genuine confusion in her voice. I looked directly at my father. "You said you were giving my shares to Charlotte. Not your shares. Mine. As if you had that right." He shifted uncomfortably. "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant," I countered. And it made me realize something important. "You see me as a resource, not a person. My value to this family is measured by what I provide financially, nothing more." "That's not true," my mother protested. "Isn't it?" I pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. "Here's a list of every financial contribution I've made to this family over the past 5 years. I read it aloud. House mortgage, $420,000. Car payments, $37,000. Health insurance premiums, $65,000. Charlotte's children's tuition, $92,000. Peter's failed studio, $60,000. Family vacations, $43,000. Regular cash gifts when requested, approximately $130,000. The total was staggering when laid out so plainly, nearly $800,000 over 5 years, not counting countless smaller expenses I hadn't documented. And what have I received in return? I continued. Not gratitude, not respect, not even acknowledgement. Instead, I got accusations of not doing enough, of being selfish with my money, and an attempt to claim ownership of something I built through years of 80-hour work weeks. Charlotte recovered first. "So, this is about money for you? Proving how generous you've been, holding it over our heads." "No," I said quietly. "It's about recognizing a painful truth. Our relationship isn't based on mutual care and respect. It's transactional. And the transaction only goes one way." My father's face had grown increasingly red. Now, he stood abruptly. "We're not going to sit here and be lectured by our own daughter. Either you continue to help this family as you should, or..." The unfinished threat hung in the air. Or what? They would stop loving me? That love already seemed conditional at best. "I think you should leave now," I said calmly. When you're ready to discuss a healthy relationship that isn't based solely on financial support, I'll be here. After they stormed out, Sarah looked at me with newfound respect. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted, but it was necessary. Later that day, Ryan called an emergency board meeting to address the potential shareholder issue. He had been my rock throughout this crisis, his loyalty never wavering despite the chaos my family had created. Your parents can't touch the company directly, he assured the small board. Jennifer's majority stake is secure, and we've already implemented additional protections. The next few days brought escalating attempts at emotional manipulation from my family. My mother left tearful voicemails about how they might lose the house. Charlotte sent photos of her children with captions like, wondering why Aunt Jennifer doesn't love them anymore. My father's messages grew increasingly hostile, then suddenly switched to apologetic, then back to demanding. I maintained my distance, focusing instead on working with Sarah to create clear separation between my personal assets and family entanglements. The situation took an unexpected turn when Peter showed up at the office demanding to speak with me. Our receptionist, alarmed by his aggressive behavior, called security. You can't hide behind your fancy lawyers, he shouted as security escorted him from the building. We know our rights. Their rights. The phrase echoed in my head long after he was gone. In their minds, access to my success was their right, not a privilege or a gift. That evening, Ryan, Sarah, and I met to develop a comprehensive strategy. We need to protect both you and the company, Sarah explained. Your parents' shares are legally theirs, but we can create a new business entity structure that dilutes the impact of that 15%. I don't want to be vindictive, I emphasized. I just need protection from further attempts to take what I've built. It's not vindictive to protect yourself, Ryan assured me. It's necessary. The plan we developed was multifaceted. First, we would create a holding company that would own the intellectual property and key assets. Second, we would reach out to our most important clients to ensure continuity of service regardless of any shareholder disputes. And third, we would document all communications with my family in case legal action became necessary. Timothy Westfield, our first major client who had become something of a mentor, was among the first I called. After explaining the situation in broad terms, he didn't hesitate. Wherever you go, we go with you, Jennifer. Our relationship is with you, not the company structure. His loyalty brought tears to my eyes, the kind of loyalty my own family had never shown. Most of our other key clients expressed similar sentiments. They trusted me, respected the business I'd built, and would follow if necessary. Within days, we began to see the consequences of my family's actions. Without my guidance, they had attempted to assert control over company decisions based on their minority stake. The board easily blocked these efforts, but the disruption was taking a toll on day-to-day operations. WebSphere's stock value dipped slightly, the first downturn in our steady growth. Employees were whispering about the family drama, distracted from their work. I called an all-hands meeting. There are some personal and structural changes happening, I explained, but our core business remains strong. Our client relationships are secure, and our mission hasn't changed. The transparency seemed to ease concerns, at least within the company, but the situation with my family continued to deteriorate. A month after that fateful dinner, Charlotte attempted to step into a leadership role at WebSphere, apparently believing the 15% stake gave her that right. She showed up at the office unannounced, introducing herself to employees as part owner and new creative director. Ryan called me immediately. Charlotte is here telling the design team to change our brand colors. Says purple represents abundance and wealth. Under different circumstances, it might have been comical. Charlotte, whose professional experience consisted of brief stints in retail and food service, attempting to direct seasoned designers and developers. But the disruption was serious. I drove straight to the office. I found her in the conference room, surrounded by confused designers. I'm thinking we need more inspirational quotes on the website, she was saying. People connect with wisdom. Charlotte, we need to talk privately, I said from the doorway. She turned, a strange mix of defiance and uncertainty on her face. I'm in the middle of a creative direction meeting. No, you're not. You don't work here. I kept my voice level but firm. Please join me in my office now. The conversation that followed was difficult but necessary. I explained that ownership shares didn't confer operational authority, especially minority shares that weren't even properly transferred yet. I outlined the legal implications of disrupting a business without authorization. And finally, I made it clear that her presence without invitation wouldn't be tolerated again. You just can't stand that I might have something of my own, she accused, tears forming. You've always needed to be the successful one. The irony was painful. Charlotte, I've spent years helping you have something of your own. I paid for your wedding, your house renovations, Peter's studio, your children's education. I've never begrudged you anything until you tried to claim credit for something you didn't build. Mom and Dad said the shares would let me be part of the company, she insisted. Did they explain what shares actually are? What responsibilities come with them? What the legal implications are? Her blank expression answered my question. My parents had dangled ownership in my company without understanding it themselves, using it as yet another way to extract resources for Charlotte, without regard for me or the business I'd built. After Charlotte left, Ryan suggested accelerating our protection plan. This is getting out of hand. We need to secure the company now. He was right. Within days, we had established a new corporate structure that effectively protected the company's core assets and operations. My parents' shares in the original entity remained intact, but had been strategically diluted in the new structure. The family reactions were predictable. My father called irate about corporate trickery. My mother pleaded that they were just trying to help Charlotte. Charlotte herself oscillated between angry accusations and tearful attempts at reconciliation, depending on which approach she thought might work better. For the first time in my life, I held firm against the tidal wave of emotional manipulation. Each call, each text, each demand reinforced the rightness of my decision to establish boundaries. Thanksgiving arrived during this tumultuous period. Traditionally, I would have hosted dinner at my home or joined them at their house, the house I had purchased. This year, I accepted Michael's invitation to join his family instead. The contrast was illuminating. Michael's parents asked about my business with genuine interest, not just to calculate what I could provide. His siblings shared both successes and failures without judgment or competition. When I offered to help clear the table, Michael's mother thanked me sincerely, rather than treating it as expected service. Is family always like this for you? I asked Michael as we drove home. Like what? Supportive. Interested in each other as people, not resources. He glanced at me quickly. That's what family should be, Jennifer. Mutual support, not one-way extraction. Meanwhile, Phoenix Digital Solutions was thriving under the new structure. Freed from the constant drain of family demands, I could focus fully on leadership and innovation. We secured 3 major new clients and expanded our service offerings. Employee morale improved as the workplace drama subsided. The new company entity quickly established itself as a rising star. Many clients transferred their contracts seamlessly, following my leadership rather than remaining with the WebSphere name. Charlotte made a desperate attempt to persuade me to return to the original arrangement. The company is suffering without you, she admitted during an unexpected visit to my condo. Dad says the value is dropping every day. That's not my responsibility anymore, I replied. You all wanted control without understanding what that meant. Now you have it. My father reached out next, his message more subdued. We may have made a mistake, he conceded, though he couldn't quite bring himself to apologize directly. The business consultants we hired say the company needs your leadership. I almost laughed at the irony. They had hired consultants with money I had provided to tell them what Ryan and I had already explained. Successful businesses don't run themselves, and expertise can't be claimed, only earned. I've moved on, I told him simply. Phoenix is my focus now. The separation proved essential for my personal healing as well. I began therapy to address the deeply ingrained patterns of caretaking and self-sacrifice that had defined my life. My therapist helped me recognize the childhood conditioning that had led me to equate love with provision, worth with utility. You were parentified at a very young age, she explained, made responsible for adult concerns and family welfare before you had the emotional capacity to understand the burden. This framework helped me make sense of my family dynamics without excusing the exploitation. I could understand the pattern while still refusing to perpetuate it. Michael remained a steady support throughout this transition. Unlike previous relationships where my family obligations had eventually driven partners away, he respected my journey without trying to control it. When I declined weekend plans to attend therapy or work on Phoenix's development, he expressed support rather than resentment. 6 months after the split, Phoenix Digital Solutions surpassed WebSphere's former valuation, reaching $12 million in our most recent funding round. The industry recognized our innovative approach and strong leadership, with several trade publications featuring profiles of our meteoric rise. WebSphere, meanwhile, continued its decline. Without my guidance, and with my parents and Charlotte making increasingly desperate attempts at leadership, the company lost major clients and talented employees. The 15% stake they had fought so hard to control was worth less each month as the company's value plummeted. News eventually reached me that WebSphere was seeking a buyer, any buyer, to salvage what remained before bankruptcy became inevitable. I felt no satisfaction in this outcome, only sadness for what could have been if greed and entitlement hadn't destroyed something valuable. The employees who remained at WebSphere deserved better than to be casualties of my family's actions. Through intermediaries, I helped facilitate a modest acquisition that preserved those jobs while extracting the business from my family's control. They received some compensation for their shares, far less than the original value, but something to show for the company's sale. As for me, I had discovered something far more valuable than financial success, the freedom to define my own worth beyond what I could provide to others. 1 year after the family dinner that changed everything, Phoenix Digital Solutions reached a valuation of $12 million, 50% higher than WebSphere's peak. Our team had grown to 40 employees, all passionate about the company culture we built around innovation, respect, and work-life balance. WebSphere had been sold to a larger tech conglomerate for a fraction of its former worth. The employees had transitioned successfully, but my family had received only a modest payout for their shares, enough to maintain their lifestyle for a while, but not the windfall they had anticipated when attempting their takeover. I decided it was time for a different kind of meeting with my parents. I suggested coffee at a neutral location, a cafe downtown, not their home or my office. To my surprise, they agreed readily, perhaps hoping for a reconciliation that would restore their financial comfort. Charlotte was notably absent, having declined my invitation with a curt message, "Nothing to discuss unless you're ready to help the family again." My parents arrived looking older than I remembered. My father's confident posture had diminished, and my mother's nervous energy seemed more pronounced. We exchanged awkward greetings before settling at a corner table with our coffees. "You look well," my mother offered. "The new company must be doing good." "Phoenix is thriving," I confirmed. "We recently expanded to include clients in Europe." "That's great," my father said, clearly uncomfortable with small talk when larger issues loomed between us. "Look, Jennifer, about everything that happened." I waited, giving him space to continue. This was his opportunity to acknowledge the harm done, to take responsibility for the betrayal that had fractured our family. "We may have been too hasty," he finally said, focusing on his coffee cup rather than meeting my eyes. "The share situation got out of hand. If we could go back to how things were before." Not an apology. Not a recognition of the fundamental problem. Just a wish to return to the arrangement where I provided and they received. Things can't go back to how they were before, I said gently but firmly. That relationship wasn't healthy for any of us. So, you're just abandoning your family? My mother's words carried a familiar sting of guilt manipulation. After everything we did for you growing up? I took a deep breath, centering myself. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm establishing boundaries that should have existed long ago. There's a difference between supporting family and enabling harmful patterns. We just wanted to help Charlotte, my father insisted. She needs more assistance than you do. That may be true, I acknowledged. But taking from me without asking, especially something I built through years of sacrifice, wasn't helping Charlotte. It was harming our relationship and teaching her that entitlement is acceptable. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering ground we had never explored before. I explained how their actions had made me feel valued only for what I could provide, not for who I was. They offered justifications rather than understanding, but at least we were having the conversation. I want you to know that despite everything, I arranged for you to receive a portion of the WebSphere sale proceeds, I told them as our meeting concluded. It's been deposited in your account. Not because I owe it to you, but because I choose to share it. The distinction was important, a gift freely given, not an obligation met. Their surprise suggested they hadn't expected even this much after what had transpired. My relationship with Michael deepened throughout this challenging year. He had witnessed my struggle to establish boundaries without becoming bitter, to protect myself without punishing others. When he proposed 6 months after the WebSphere sale, I accepted without the hesitation that would have plagued me before. Your family is invited to the wedding, he said as we discussed plans, but only if their presence will support your happiness, not diminish it. The consideration behind his words brought tears to my eyes. For the first time in my life, someone was prioritizing my well-being without expecting anything in return. My healing journey involved multiple approaches. Weekly therapy helped me identify and address the deeply ingrained beliefs about my value being tied to provision. Meditation and yoga gave me tools to manage anxiety when family interactions triggered old patterns. Perhaps most importantly, I built a community of supportive friends and colleagues who demonstrated what healthy relationships actually looked like. I found unexpected purpose in mentoring other female entrepreneurs, particularly those struggling with family expectations while building their businesses. Their stories often echoed aspects of my own, and sharing my experience helped them establish healthier boundaries from the start. You can love your family without sacrificing your well-being, I would tell them. In fact, healthy boundaries often lead to healthier relationships in the long run. 6 weeks before my wedding, I invited my entire family to dinner, parents, Charlotte, Peter, their children. The event was a test of sorts, a chance to see whether our new boundaries could support a modified relationship. To my surprise, Charlotte arrived without Peter. He's not in the picture anymore, she explained briefly when I inquired about his absence. The children seemed happy to see me, though they had grown considerably in the months since our last meeting. Dinner proceeded with a strange new dynamic. My parents were careful with their words, avoiding direct requests for assistance. Charlotte mentioned looking for work, something she hadn't done in years. When the check came, no one assumed I would cover it. A small, but significant shift. I'm getting my teaching certificate, Charlotte said as dessert was served. The community college has a program that works around the kids' schedules. That's wonderful, I replied, genuinely pleased by this development. Teaching would suit you well. A flicker of something crossed her face. Pride, perhaps, or determination. I need to stand on my own feet. Recent events made that pretty clear. It wasn't an apology or full acknowledgement of a role in what had transpired, but it was movement in a healthier direction. I chose to acknowledge the positive step rather than dwelling on past injuries. The gathering ended without drama or new wounds, a modest success by the standards of our family history. As they prepared to leave, my father awkwardly mentioned my upcoming wedding. We received the invitation, he said. We'd like to come if that's still all right. I'd like that, I replied simply. In the car afterward, Michael asked how I felt about the evening. Hopeful, I said after consideration. Not for a perfect relationship or complete understanding, but for something healthier than what we had before. They're trying in their way. Building Phoenix taught me about business strategy and leadership, but rebuilding my sense of self-worth proved the more valuable education. I learned that love shouldn't come with invoices attached. That helping others is beautiful when chosen, toxic when demanded. That family is about mutual support, not one-way extraction. Most importantly, I discovered that my value exists independently of what I can provide to others. A truth so obvious to some, yet revolutionary for those of us raised to be caretakers at our own expense. Today, Phoenix continues to grow. My marriage to Michael brings daily joy, and my family relationships exist within careful boundaries that protect everyone involved. The journey wasn't easy, but the destination proved worth every painful step. If you've ever found yourself giving until there's nothing left, please remember, establishing boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships. True love supports your wholeness, not just your usefulness. What was your biggest takeaway from my story? Share in the comments below. And if it resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening to my journey. May it help you navigate your own with courage and self-respect.